Well, watered down or not, the Supreme Court's decision is extremely concerning for groups that defend immigrants' rights. Our Rise America correspondent Sheri Richardson spoke with Hasan Shafiqullah. He's the attorney in charge of the Immigration Law Unit at the Legal Aid Society in New York.
Hasan Shafiqullah, thank you for joining us. First of all, what was your reaction when you heard this decision?
Incredible disappointment. We were sure that the Supreme Court would do the right thing and recognize that this ban was born out of animus against Muslims. This isn't about keeping America safe. It's not about carefully vetting who comes into the country. It's about categorically saying people from certain countries, because they're from mostly Muslim countries, shouldn't be allowed in here at all. So we hoped that the Supreme Court would say what we think is correct, that this is unconstitutional. You can't do that.
Now, I was just about to ask you that. Is this unconstitutional religious discrimination?
So in my opinion it is, but unfortunately what the Supreme Court says determines what is constitutional or not. And so 5 of the 9 justices found that it is not, and that the government had a rational basis for doing what it did.
Could this ruling possibly add more countries?
So the ruling, now that the Supreme Court has said that once the Trump administration articulates reasons for banning people from certain countries, there's nothing that would block the administration from going through the same analysis and adding additional countries to the list.
So in terms of, this is for Muslims. Well, first let's keep talking about this situation. What's next? Is there any way to reverse this decision? And if so, how?
So the only way to reverse this decision is to get a new ruling from the Supreme Court. Anytime that they speak on a constitutional question, that's the final answer. And so hopefully at some more enlightened future date, a majority of the justices would listen to what the 2 dissenting opinions said, which is that there's no question that this is unconstitutionally religious discrimination. And so we just need one justice to see the light and recognize that this is wrong. I do want to clarify that the ban itself included some countries that were not from Muslim nations, particularly Venezuela and North Korea. The litigation challenging the ban didn't challenge those countries' restrictions. They challenged only the countries that were majority Muslim.
Looking at what's happening right now at the border in southern United States, could this have an effect on that? What does this mean for that whole situation?
So what's happening at the border right now is an influx of individuals, mostly from Central America, where the conditions there are terrible, and as a humanitarian cry for help, people are coming to our border and saying, give us protection under the UN Convention on Refugees, which we're a signatory to, that if I meet the definition of a refugee, grant me safe haven in the United States. So nothing that happened in today's decision should affect what's happening with the migrants. If anything, we hope that the Trump administration would recognize that our obligation to international law and to our own laws, to our statutes that say when somebody is in danger in their home country and seeking safe haven in the U.S., don't turn them away. You have an obligation under the law to at least allow them to make their case to you. So the banned countries and the justifications given for the ban, that certain countries are a danger to us, there's no basis in law or fact to say that these Central American countries where people are fleeing violence are bringing danger here, that they're inherently dangerous to us.
Like in terms of this decision by the Supreme Court regarding these countries, why would they possibly rule in this way?
So the reason the Supreme Court ruled the way it did is that they used a standard of review which is very low. So the Supreme Court could say there's 3 standards of review for constitutional decisions. Either strict scrutiny, like for racial decisions. The government has to have a very strong reason to say we're going to treat people of certain races differently. So a strict scrutiny analysis is very hard to overcome. Heightened scrutiny is less stringent, but the lowest level is rational basis. If the government has any rational basis for doing what it's doing, the Supreme Court is going to say, may not be the way that we would have decided this, but the government is being rational, right? They're not being crazy, and so we're going to defer to their decision making. What we on our side argue is that if you're discriminating against people based on their religion, and these are Muslims, this a lot plays in with religion and nationality and possibly even race, so at the very least use a heightened standard of scrutiny. And if there were a heightened standard of scrutiny applied by the Supreme Court justices, we believe that the ruling would have come down against the Muslim ban. They would have said, you can't justify this. The majority of the court, unfortunately, used the lowest level of scrutiny, rational basis review, saying, well, the government has articulated security concerns. They're saying that we've done an analysis and that these countries are a danger to us. And so rationally, using the lowest level of review possible, we can't really justify striking this down.
So this seems like a big win for President Trump.
It's a big win for President Trump, and the worry is that this will embolden him to take other dramatic actions that we believe are unconstitutional, and that we'll have to fight each one in the courts all the way up to the Supreme Court. But this does open the door to more what we think is executive overreach and unconstitutional action on his part. I want to talk about rational basis for a moment. If the government, if our administration is really saying, let us protect the American people from countries that we think are dangerous to us. Take a look at the 9/11 attacks here in New York City, where the attackers were from Saudi Arabia, all of them. And so now you have a group of people who are bent on causing harm to the United States, all from a certain country, not on the list of countries that were subject to the ban. Some countries that are on the list have never done anything to harm the United States' interest. And so even under a rational basis review, it doesn't make sense. It's not narrowly targeted to get at the people who are trying to hurt us.
So in your rationale, why is this happening?
These are countries that the Trump administration feels that it has the latitude to antagonize and score political points on. It's not about keeping America safe.
And when you mean score political points, give me some examples.
For President Trump to say these people are bad, to use a very reductive term that he loves to use, choosing Somalia and choosing North Korea, although this was before his rapprochement with the dictator there, it's a way for him to say, I'm doing something to keep America safe, without necessarily having an adverse impact on our allies like Saudi Arabia, which is a strategic partner in the Middle East, but from which we've had terror attacks launched directly on our soil.
So if people are against this ruling, what can people do?
If you're against this ruling, what we need to do is, what we really need to do is change Congress and change the presidency, and when Supreme Court positions are opened up in the future, hopefully have more reasonable minds making the decisions about who sits on the high court, not with any litmus test, but just rational actors who are willing to say, this is so obviously wrong, of course we're going to do the right thing.
So you're telling people to go to the polls?
Go to the polls. November's not too far away.
Thank you very much.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.